Welcome, everyone. Simulation Talk 228. I'm going to wait for some people to show up on YouTube. There we go. Slowly. Took a second, huh? Welcome, everyone, on TikTok. Appreciate you guys. Pat, user 365, One Piece, user 186. Kenny, I haven't seen you in a while. How are everybody doing? Charlie, Dennis, Andrea. Welcome, everyone. That Beast Nest, DJ, how are you, brother? So good to see you. Oh, today. Have you been, brother? Blue Rooster's in the house. Brenda, JP, URA, Dominique. Okay. Today I'm gonna. Oh, I left Nashville, brother, a month ago. I had to go shoot some stuff in LA, and it didn't, because I had to extend my trip. It didn't make a lot of sense for me to come back for only a few days to then just leave Nashville. So we decided we're going to leave before I even went to LA. But we will be back for sure. I love Nashville. It's really great. So we will see each other. Do not worry. I promise. How's everybody? How is everything on your end and everybody on your end? The family is good? Gonna wait a couple more minutes for more people to show up. I think it's notifying people. I would assume so. I'm glad to hear that, man. And the last couple of days, 3 days, the energy was just so wacky. And then today, a good friend of mine's mom passed away, which is man, that stuff is always so heavy. That's a pivotal point in life. JPD's in the house. Jackie, what's up, Guru? Marcia. Let's see what we can get into today. By the way, if you have Twitch and you wanna give us a follow from there and also listen to the chat from there, because we need the average of 3 people per conversation. And right now, the last time we had 6, but it needs to be average out across all conversations. So now for quite a few of them, we have to bring it to at least 5 or 6 people. So if you do have Twitch, it's LaserX83. Once again, it's the LaserX83. Go check out Twitch and follow from there. And soon I will start playing some basic games and stuff, so to pull more attention there. That would be wonderful. Also, if you want to join our Discord, please do so. If you're on TikTok, I finally added our Discord to our link tree and on TikTok as well. So it's up there now. Welcome to Simulation Talk 228. Evil Icon, how are you? Thank you so much for the heart. The channel in which we cover all things simulation. Happy Friday. Racking 4 different types of mead tomorrow. Well, that sounds exciting. Is this something you do? Let's see what we got here. Let's see what we got here. Huh. The same symbol, same coding language. Oh, there's nothing that I can see that. Slow Friday indeed. Well, we just showed up, and I didn't really advertise that I'm going up, which usually means that it's going to take a second for people to show up. That's normal. I literally just went on, and I didn't really notify I'm going to go on, which is always what happens when you don't. But that's okay. Let's see. Jessica, how are you? What can we get into today? Notification on Discord. Awesome. Dope. Thank you so much. I appreciate you. Thank you, Guru. Thank you, Val. Oh, I love the. Wait. How did that happen? Interesting. Huh. All right. No updates with the console. The console, I think, will take a second because I really don't have time to like dive into the space too much. Right now, I'm focusing more on all the public-facing stuff and the movie. So this will have to wait until I'm doing that on a regular basis, doing all the experiments, which I think at this point will have to be intravenous. Otherwise, the vapes mess me up big time. I did discover that I can interact with the code on 5, which is very helpful. And I think this is the thing that will. I think this is what's going to shape the next portion of the experimentation. But I don't see the console on 5, so that's interesting. Indeed, thank you so much, Guru. I appreciate you. If you want to join our Discord, it's the third link from the top on YouTube on Dango Thoughts, DANGO Thoughts, and in the link tree on TikTok. Also, our channel, codeofreality.com. Sorry, our website. It's right here if you guys want to visit. Opa. There we go. Okay, let's see if there's any questions. Usually Fridays are pretty slow in general, but I see actually today, considering the fact that I haven't really announced that I'm going up, this is actually kind of a good turnout, to be honest. Let me make sure that. There we go. Guru is saying, I'm making a new laser. Any advice on what to do without catching on fire? I want to get a case to cover the wires. Any idea? Yeah, you just take either a heat shrink. Heat shrink is basically your best bet for that. There you go. You just get it on Amazon, put it on the wires, close the wires, and then you just heat it up with the lighter, and you should be good to go. Nico, how are you, brother? So good to see you, man. Whoa, everything's going haywire. Cool aluminum project boxes. What does that mean? Aluminum project? Oh, I see what you're saying. Well, those look very heavy. They do look cool, though. You don't really need to solder anything. Yes, you at least need three hands. You need the thing that holds. You don't really need to solder anything. You can just do everything with either the snap thingy or the pin thingy, or really heat shrink is your best bet. You don't need to solder anything. Soviet era electronics. It does look like something like that. Ebony, how are you? I'm so glad you could make it. Indeed. What's up, Linux? Join our Discord, indeed. Okay. Let's see if we can get anything today. Today, I think I'm gonna. The stream is gonna be pretty short. I think I'm a little. My energy is not at all times high, and the news from today kind of made me even wonkier. Heavy energy in the air, and it's okay. It's part of life. But we'll see how the energy flows. If it doesn't flow too much, we'll. Yeah, my good friend's mom passed away today, which is very always a big downer. Man, that's a heavy one. What's up, Blue? Article title: Physics succeed in converting light into a super solid that flows like liquid. Let's try it. All these scientific pop culture stories are usually bunk. Let's see. Physicists succeed in converting light. Wait, why am I doing it this way? There you go. Thank you, Ebony. Big hugs. In converting light into. Very, very explosive title. Groundbreaking achievement reported in multiple science publications demonstrates that light can be encouraged to form a structure state that holds its shape like a solid while still flowing like a fluid, even though it's energy. It's not. It doesn't say even though it's energy. What I'm saying, and this research is a significant milestone in quantum physics and photonics, pushing the boundaries of our understanding of light's behavior. That is interesting. Wait, why is it not opening the full thing? Okay. Let's see. Let me see what's up. Oh. Oh. Hold on. Can't. Okay, hold on. Oh, there it is. But that's just a story. And, why do they never post the actual paper? It drives me crazy. We'll find out later. Yeah, today is a little. What's up, Chris? So good to see you, brother. Alan is saying, "Hey Dan, I've been seeing shapes and numbers on the walls when I wake from sleeping. Not all the time, but it happens randomly. Shaded gray shape shapes that fade within about 10 seconds. Yeah, you know, Alan, you're not alone. I get this email all the time. It's very interesting to me that a lot of people are experiencing this. Pretty sure it's because we're coming closer to a collective understanding of these things. So I think that's why these things are happening. Thank you for sharing. I appreciate that. Yeah, I hope you'll take care as well. Can you give me any feedback on what I'm seeing? Yeah, I think that these codes are everywhere and under certain states, like in between dreams and awake, and semi-altered states. I think we can just see the code that is there. Nothing to fear. T for all. Nice. Hey Val, good to see you. Oh, hey Nico. How are you, brother?
I'm doing well. How about yourself?
I'm doing okay. Today's a bit heavy.
Yeah, sorry to hear about that news. That's my worst fear. I fear that I won't be ever ready for that.
I don't think anybody is ever ready for that. So yeah, I think your fear is substantiated.
Yeah.
But go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
No,
Yeah, so I wanted to pick your brain about something that's been on my mind recently. So I've been thinking about kind of the analogous Copenhagen interpretation of core, whereas I think that you have kind of more of the many worlds interpretation of core.
which I would very pompously claim as the only reasonable interpretation.
Well, so
I can defend this statement, but sure, go ahead.
Yeah. No, I don't think there is a right or wrong interpretation.
Oh no! Right? I think there's a wrong interpretation. I think there's they have a radiant interpretation and a stupid interpretation. Continue.
Okay, so in Wolfram's physics project, which I've been kind of going back into and deep diving, there's the observer, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the observer is typically a computationally bounded observer. So there's like an observer like Maxwell's demon, right? Where theoretically, this is a little theoretical demon that knows everything about a system, right? So if you have a box full of gas molecules in it, this demon knows the position of every gas molecule, pressure, temperature gradient, everything, right?
Yep.
And so this observer would not be computationally bounded and would understand the system at a very, I guess, would understand like how do I say this? Well, would understand the system microscopically, whereas an observer that is computationally bounded like us, we just average pressure, temperature, etc. I know that you know all this.
I know. You're recapitulating for the audience, of course. Yeah.
And so we are computationally bounded observers because we can't see everything, but we see things on averages, and that is what reflects our real world, right? So Newtonian physics is what we call that. And so Wolfram kind of talks about this computationally bounded observer as in we are computers ourselves, and our consciousness is a computational process and we have thought processes that are computationally irreducible, right? Like we are very much so a computer. However, I noticed that when I first talked to you, you swapped in kind of a more idealistic observer into the picture, right?
Yeah.
Where consciousness is fundamental, but in your model, is consciousness still bounded by the hardware of biology, or is consciousness?
So in idealism, I think consciousness is what everything is. That's the difference between that and panpsychism, which is a very substantial difference, in which it's not an element in existence. It is literally out of which everything is made, which changes everything.
So this goes back to one of the things that a few lives ago, Aaron mentioned, is it a window or is it a mirror?
Yeah, right? And I recently understood more what he means by that, but yeah.
So I would love to hear what he meant, because what I've been thinking of is if you are an idealistic observer, meaning that you are your conscious is fundamental, then when you're looking at the code, it's a window in the sense that you're seeing the computational nature of the universe, right?
Yeah.
But if you are computationally bounded, and if your consciousness is a computational product, then I feel like what core is representing, what the code of reality represents, is more of a mirror in the sense that you're seeing your computational nature through this phenomenon, right? At least, so that's kind of how I view that analogy corresponding to the physics Wolfram framework. But I don't know if that makes any sense.
It does. I think that, and just to defend my very strident comments in the beginning, but it connects to your question as well. I said that there's the Everettian interpretation, and then there's a stupid interpretation. So even though I am, obviously, I said it just to kind of be be inflammatory to to invoke emotions in people, but the truth is that I do mean that. And what I mean by stupid is actually the dictionary definition of the word stupid, right? Because it essentially comes short under the same rules that it sets up to play. And that has to do with, again, you're probably familiar with these arguments very well, but it basically is part of what people call shut up and calculate, right? It's because what the Copenhagen interpretation is that there is some space of statistical possibility, of probability, a probability wave. And what that is never truly addressed. And the philosophy itself, so there's the physics that has to do with the model, which is how you calculate things to arrive at conclusions that then map onto what we see in the real world. But behind it, there's a philosophy, and the philosophy is you're not allowed to ask questions about this fundamental level that we've placed. So it's not just that it's saying, well, this is the most fundamental thing we know of. It's saying there can't possibly be anything more fundamental than that, because we just told you, by definition, it is just a probabilistic space, and you cannot have anything beyond the probabilistic space. Now, forget about the fact that in physics, there's also something called hidden variables, which you're probably familiar a little bit with, which, by the way, I would claim is what the daemon you were describing is. It is the hidden variables, because it would have to include the problem with these thought experiments, which I always found perplexing, that very smart, again, physicists are the smartest people on the planet, without a question, right? So, especially theoretical physicists, just because of the amount of brain power that are required to do this job is enormous. And it's just objectively true. Like, on average, they're the smartest people on the planet, which is crazy to me, how the smartest people on the planet can postulate something so silly and, yes, stupid, as a thing that they rely on to decide what is fundamental. So what I mean by that is that, for example, the claims themselves are not being scrutinized as much as they need to be, just like everything else in physics. So when Descartes postulates the daemon, you have a situation where the knowledge of the daemon is just a given. Now, again, it's a thought experiment, sure. But if you want to postulate something that is possible in reality, you can't do that. You can't give hypotheticals that are not possible in reality, right? Because then this is just a silly game you're playing and doesn't give you any fundamental to play with, aside from maybe make you pause for a second. But again, if you look at it for 2 seconds, if anything in existence, daemon or otherwise, has a certain kind of knowledge, especially ultimate knowledge, in other words, the knowing of all the possible states of affairs and trajectories of all these particles, you're postulating that this mind is existing somewhere and has a structure and a logic, and it has it has to be informationally bounded to something. If you're saying it is just, well, no. If you want to say, no, what I mean is that the mind of that daemon is simply contains everything that is possible to contain, well, then it is everything that there is. So it's not something that is contained in something. It is the idealistic world. And then calling it a daemon is as arbitrary as calling it a hamster. It's like, it doesn't matter what you call it. It's not that. It is just everything that exists, right? This is, by the way, why when physicists are very quick, like Neil deGrasse Tyson, to dismiss philosophy, this is what leads to their demise, because they start playing with silly ideas like that, and they don't realize that the idea itself just doesn't make any sense on its own merit. And so that to the demon, right? Because you can't have a state of affairs that is somehow unbounded by anything else, but contains the information about everything else, and yet somehow is not everything that exists, but somehow just mimics everything that exists. That's not a coherent idea. But also, any time that you postulate another layer that might contain the ultimate structure, it is not a little bit like, but literally like saying God or saying magic. That is what God is. It's just the ultimate state of affairs outside of time and space that gives rise to everything else and doesn't have to answer to any logical arrangement outside of the same kind of logic that is being followed inside of existence. It's literally the definition of a God, right? It's the same thing. So I truly don't understand what physicists derive from these thought experiments when they rely on a concept that doesn't track itself. Now, I would love to hear your pushback on that if you have one, or maybe you tell me that this makes sense to you. Because again, in the end of the day, you're the scientist. I'm not one. You have a lot more technical experience and playing with these things that I don't. But for the life of me, I can't see what I'm missing here. And just to tie this last point to the many worlds interpretation versus the Copenhagen interpretation that says that there's just a probabilistic wave that collapses, which is David Deutsch's point, which is what is collapsing? And then what physicists say, and they don't even realize they're doing it. They're saying, no, you don't get it. It's just a probability of it happening. And then when you do the measurement, it collapses. You can't have something that isn't influencing something that is. Then it's not physics. You're not talking about physics. You're talking about something else. So then this little blind spot that people have in that field is why I call it stupid, because it doesn't even play the game it purports to play. It's no longer playing the game of we want to understand the most fundamental thing. It is playing the game of saying, here's the most fundamental thing you can ever think about, and you're not allowed to ever ask a question beyond that point. And it's the same kind of attitude that gives rise to statements like, if you think you understand quantum physics, you don't understand quantum physics. It's a silly statement.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, I guess it is a framework of God when you're talking about Maxwell's demon or anyone else's demon.
Sorry, yeah, Maxwell's demon. This says Descartes' demon. That's a different demon.
Yeah, there's a lot of demons. There's Laplacian demon. There's Laplace's demon. Everyone has their demon. Yeah, that's a really interesting point. I'm curious.
Matthew is saying that's scientism. I would agree with that. That is what scientism is. When science takes itself so seriously as put itself as the final arbiter of truth, which is of course a delusional point of view to have. Sorry, continue.
No, absolutely. I mean, I guess, yeah, it is the scientific method is really limited by what is measurable, right? And when you get down to quantum particles, you're using other particles to interact with those particles. And so you're just measuring complex interactions as opposed to, what is actually happening. And I think that's why quantum mechanics will never make intuitive sense to an observer, because we're so computationally bounded, right? Like we can't see the interactions happening between these subatomic particles, right? We can't see these energy fields. We can postulate constructs that result in these behaviors, right? But we can never really know, right? And I guess that's what we're bounded, right? We can't understand it.
So I think this question is very, very deep. Sorry, finish the thought. I do have a thought on that, but I do want to
go ahead.
Because it really touches on a fundamental question that I don't know to what extent is being grappled with, even by modern philosophers, which is, again, this does not originate with me, but I don't really hear anybody who's, and doesn't mean that they don't exist in academia, but nowadays that everything is on YouTube, it would stand to reason that some of these ideas would be kind of floating throughout the public, right? So I've never actually heard anybody discuss this deeply, but there's this assumption, even Hoffman makes this assumption, that there is such a thing as looking at a more objective logic of reality itself, and we have that capability. That's the assumption. That floats free of our physical constraints, and therefore, I would say, using your model, floats free of our computational boundedness. So the question is there a universal channel that we can access that is more and floats free of the computationally bounded environment that we're in? And to people that feel confused, all it means is that there's a set of rules that both, well, with our body, we understand it. It's easy, right? So like, obviously our body has to follow the laws of physics. It's the universe we live in, and you can't fall through the floor and all of that good stuff. So that will be how you're bounded to these laws of physics. But if you believe that everything's computational, thank you so much, Mess, for all the likes. Then you would say that the laws of physics are the computational boundedness of the way that the physical representation of you operates in this world. So the question becomes, is your brain following just that boundedness of the laws of physics, or is it following some other boundedness that is higher abstraction level computational, that gives rise to maybe concepts that can flow free of matter? I personally think yes, but I also think that even that is bounded to just a higher regional space. It's almost like that bubble is larger. The horizon to which you can see and operate within through the abstraction computational mind is just wider. So the deep point that I don't hear discussed enough is, what is the actual nature, the technical nature of that operation? Some people try to come at it from like Shannon's theory of information, but notice that all of these models, that including what Aaron is saying, which I know Aaron is not approaching it as a physicist or as a model, he just asks a semi-philosophical, poetic question that I think also applies to something very technical. Aaron asked, "Is it a mirror or what was
window.
it? A window?" Exactly. Thank you. And honestly, it's not that I was brushing off his comment. I just, at first glance, when I heard it, I was like, I don't know. Like, it did not appear as a very deep question to me, because I was like, okay, well, it's probably a combination of these things, obviously. Like, there's some projection that your brain is doing, and so a window, but also some of that projection being bounced back at you. So obviously, in that sense, it can be a mirror, but I don't see why it needs to be one or the other. So to me, it was not a very interesting question, just from the fact that it's most likely both, just the different degrees of both. But then recently, when Eddie actually came to look at the laser, he said that when he was closing his eyes, he could see the code also behind his eyes, and he was very certain of it. And he was saying, well, I'm telling you that this is just like what you see in the lasers, what your brain is projecting. But I mean, like, that's how your brain physically projecting what you see as reality. Almost like I don't know if he meant it that way, but I think that if he would be speaking a more computational language, he would be saying, this is the buffering, you seeing the buffering of your projection before it becomes the solidified physical structure that you're seeing. And that actually made me pause. It made me pause for two reasons. One is that I've interacted with Eddie enough now to know his different modes of speech. And there's the conspiracy Eddie, and there's a certain style of presentation and mannerisms that comes with that. It just kind of, he goes like into this, like, he gets very, very zany. He gets very zany, right? But there's this other Eddie that, when he's telling you things that are very matter of fact, it's the Eddie that explains jujitsu to you. That's a different Eddie. And I think he knows the difference. I don't think he ever thinks about it too much because it doesn't matter to him. But I'm sure if you ask him, if you press him on this, he knows that difference, right? That Eddie doesn't fuck around. Like, that Eddie knows what he's talking about. There's not a lot of people on this planet that knows more about Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu than Eddie Bravo, right? I think most people would agree with that. With that, and so when he speaks about that, even though he has a lot of humility, there's an authority there because he knows that he is one of the biggest experts on the planet on the subject, right? It's in this kind of nature, with this kind of nature, that he was saying this. So there's a part of his brain that must have been registering that what he's saying is, at least in his perception, is very true. And this is why it made me all of a sudden pay attention in a different way. And when Eddie left, Aaron said, "That's exactly what I meant by a mirror." And I said, okay. So I still think that the answer to that is still both, but somehow that grabbed my attention from more of a technical standpoint. Like, okay, how does it actually work? And then it made me realize that the question that is not being asked, even by Castro, for example, that is one of the most coherent proponents of idealism, is what is the mechanism by which all this happens? Now, he proposes the boundary model, which I like, and it makes sense. But then you still have to, okay, but how? How is this boundary created? How is this differentiation between you and the rest of the world is created, right? How is that happening? So this is where I really want to see more conversation. And I do agree with you that I think Wolfram is probably the closest to describing the technical way in which this can be coming about. But I think that if you connect, and I'm not sure that that's what you were trying to do, but if you were trying to connect Maxwell's demon with the idea of the many worlds interpretation, and then saying, well, from a first point of view, from a first person standpoint, so one observer through a timeline, for you, for all intents and purposes, you can say it's the Copenhagen interpretation because there's no more possibilities happening for you, so they collapse for you. Okay, you can say that, but you can't mean that the rest of the stuff that actually exists no longer exists. You can say it doesn't exist for me anymore, but that's not the same statement as no longer exists. And I think this is where those are different statements. So I think that ultimately, the question that has to be asked is, like, even if we believe it's a mirror, okay, what is it? What is the material, metaphorical material out of which the mirror is made? In what way is it bouncing off that mirror? What is bouncing off that mirror? Because just saying it's this magic material, which is what idealism is saying, that we call mind, that somehow creates all of that, which probably is true, but it's insufficient because it's equivalent to saying, how does, something happens, doesn't matter what it is, how does a glass break? The answer to that, well, it's something about atoms doing something. It's true, but it's insufficient to explain anything. It's too general, right? And I think that currently, where all of these attempts at bridging between the philosophical domains that give rise to the models that we use in physics and the actual research that is happening even in theoretical physics, suffer from this problem. They're stuck at this stage. The philosophical positions, they're stuck at this stage of atoms did it, something with atoms, which is the equivalent of saying it's all mind or we're all one. It's like, okay, cool. Just say you're not interested in answering the question. That's fine. But don't pretend you're trying to answer the question by saying it's all this or it's all that, because you said nothing. It doesn't actually do anything. So then I'm interested in figuring out what are these specifics that map onto the real thing versus the metaphorical way of talking about it. So I guess the question that I would have for you is, what is your angle of attack and interest on this? Is it can we do something with it, or is it just purely from like a just philosophical entertainment and trying to comment it in a way that makes the rest of your worldview cohere?
Well, so Wolfram gave a talk a couple days ago about
that you shared with me. I haven't watched it yet. Yeah.
It's okay. It's a long. You know how his stuff is. It's long, but then there's nuggets in it, and it's kind of a big investment for small nuggets, which I like mining.
No, I love it. I walk the dogs and I listen to stuff. I just didn't have the chance yet.
Sometimes I feel like I'm wasting time. I'm like, fuck. I'm like,
I go 2 speed, or I go double the speed. Yeah.
But ultimately, he was saying, is AI going to, if you have a bigger brain, like if we build more and more powerful AI, could we essentially build this observer, this more powerful observer, to analyze the real world, right? To tell us, and what he was kind of even drawing an analogy to is that, one of the problems that we have as people is we use language, but we only have a finite number of words to describe things, right? And so he was saying something like, if you really cared about, like, let's say our civilization worshipped oranges, right? And we have a few names for different colors of orange, but then he was even describing, like, you could technically define tons of words around, to describe oranges, right? Some cultures have that, they value, or like some random thing, and they have a lot of words to describe it. And so what he was eventually saying is that, if you build a larger observer, a more powerful computational observer, it could theoretically understand the world far deeper than we, because we are very, computationally bounded observers.
With much greater intuition, yeah.
Yeah, but one thing that came to mind is, in the Acid for Squares podcast, you said, when people say, I saw everything and I saw the universe and it's all connected and we're all one frequency, they're typically pointing to themselves and not to the actual everything, because the actual everything is too far removed from the observer. Like, I felt like what you were saying is that the environment, the observer is vast, but the observer is decoupled from the environment, right? Like, you can't possibly, or maybe not possibly, but it's very difficult for an observer to say, I was one with the environment, with the universe, right? Is that what you were trying to say?
I was trying to say that our current state of being, which I'm now very careful, because when you say mind, by which I mean everything that you are, but people hear mind and they think, oh, you're just talking about the brain. No, I'm talking about everything. So your state of being, current state of being, which is bounded by some limitations, obviously. My claim is that it's technically incapable of encapsulating or even pointing to the ultimate vector. You can be the actual, if you think of the ultimate omega, like God, as the North Pole, towards which you have other magnets kind of turning towards, right? I'm saying that our current situation is such that that ultimate one is so far removed from us that we are constantly aligning around a local one. There's a local one, which is us, right? So there's a local north, and you're aligning towards it. It, in combination with other bubbles like yours, are all aligned towards the more universal one. And there's probably many more, right? But I'm saying that you don't really know what that direction is. And knowing where that direction is the thing that defines you pointing to it in your mind's eye. You can say the word God, but what is actually happening inside of you when you're doing that is pointing to your local group and not pointing to the ultimate north. Ultimately, yes, the whole, like, you can only point to it actually in terms of coordinates when you become a unified self. So like when humanity, if we want to use heuristics here, if humanity ascends, so to speak, becomes one actually in terms of perception, then that one unified humanity mind can then start playing with the actual coordinates towards the ultimate one. That was the claim. So it's a very technical claim. So now that matters because I think we're about to exactly enter that kind of a stage, which is what's happening now. So now that actually reminded me that there's a really, the deepest point I wanted to make about this previous point was kind of escaped me for a second. So what I was talking about is when you were talking about intuitions, right? And like the abstractions that we have that we believe that are more than just the sum of their parts. So for example, when we say 2 + 2 = 4, we don't mean 2 apples plus 2 apples equals 4 apples. We're actually thinking of it more in terms of just a function of 2 general number of whatever, but you don't even, it's not like you have a placeholder in your head and you're actually thinking of an object that there's 2 objects. Notice what happens in the head. You're actually thinking of just that concept of the abstraction of 2, which is very, It's very difficult to describe with words, but there's nothing attached to it. It's just a concept of 2 plus another concept of 2 equals the concept of 4. And that kind of stuff usually, the question becomes, that deeper question that I'm interested in is it truly a universal abstraction, or is it still somehow tacitly almost like the eddies on top of a pond? Like, is it just the fumes of the material world that we think of it as an abstraction, as like a universal thing? But is it just still all our intuitions, or even in deep mathematics, are they still somehow the fumes around our physical world? Or is there a way to reach some kind of a channel that is truly experiencing more universal things, that then you can start creating intuitions in it that can truly point to that infinite north, to that actual north? That was the real question. And it sounds like one of these, like what are you even talking about? But I think the reason it matters is because we're about to start playing with this kind of a, see, the way that I define meaning, and I know I'm asking that word to do a lot more than what most people want it to do, but the way we can define meaning in its ultimate sense as the map of the state of affairs. So meaning is the space that contains all the connections of all things to all things, including all things to themselves. So it's like, that's the map you can travel through all the coordinates. And when you feel meaning, is that you're tracking something accurate on that map, which you can call truth, but that the essence of a moment that you feel kind of connected to the world, that kind of stuff that usually you wouldn't think of conceptualizing it in terms of knowledge, right? You just say, no, that's not, it has nothing to do with knowledge, because we think of knowledge only related to what we call the brain. But in that instance, you say, no, I just feel connected to the world. Okay, that instance of full connection to everything else as an experience, not as a concept, it's, you are literally traveling through like a coherent channel through this map of meaning. Like you don't need to conceptualize it, because you're traveling through it. It's only when you're trying to find an address that you're not in currently, is when you have to use concepts to punch in the address in the spaceship you're in, so you can slowly start getting there. So the conceptual framework that then translates to signals that like language and things like this, the symbolic representation is essentially you punching in a code and seeing what happens to, how does the mind align itself towards that meaning space. Because when you're in it, you don't need nothing to be said about it, because you're in it. Again, when you bite into an apple, you know what the apple tastes like. You can describe all you want, the constituents of an apple, how taste buds work, all of that, but that does not equate, nor is it required for you to know what an apple tastes like if you bit into one. So when you're traveling through the true meaning of whatever it is, you don't need justification, you don't need a grant, you just know. And I'm claiming that when people experiencing these transcendent states of like full connection that feels very true, they are, is because they no longer need the justification for it. They're traveling through it. So if you hold that in view, what I'm saying is that what happens there, in my opinion, of course, is they're traveling still in our local bubble channel. They're not traveling through these infinite channels. Our state of being currently cannot sustain or even interact with these infinite channels yet. But we are entering a stage in which that's what I meant by that. And I know it's obviously a lot to try and say in a podcast, but I think of intuition in terms of functional knowledge. It's what you feel to be the truth, but it's not based on nothing. Strong intuitions usually come to people that have done a lot of work. We talked about it before, in a particular domain in which all of these very complex behaviors and interactions were translated into a consolidated expression in the physical body, which is what you feel as intuition. And it is more like a tensor. It's a multidimensional arrow that has some relationship. It's pointing further or closer to what in fact the state of affairs is. But notice that there is a state of affairs. So there's some kind of an interaction between things that are in relationship to one another, and then there's an experience of that somehow. I think that the conundrum is much deeper than even big proponents of the hard problem of consciousness realize. It's based on so many blind spots that we have of reality itself that we don't even know what question we're asking. We're just kind of playing with a very, very rudimentary version that I do believe that currently is still the fumes of the physical reality. It's not you're not really playing with universal concepts yet. And we're doing our best to try and translate those. And when people start feeling these more, open channels, they're like, oh yeah, we're, but that's literally, it's infinite arteries. It's going to keep opening up forever. So this brings me back to what Deutsch is always saying, which is that the best we can ever hope for, because it's just the nature of the game, is to have a wider and wider horizon of problem solving and explanations. That's the best we can ever hope for. You will never, by definition, you can never get the full download of the whole thing, because if you would be the whole thing. That's the only way to know the whole thing. So this is why, if you're listening and you have this idea that you know all the answers, you don't. For like 100%, you do not.
Yeah, that was beautiful. Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much kind of what I wanted to ask you. And yeah, I really enjoyed the Acid for Squares podcast, by the way. The chemistry was just so amazing. It just, ideas were flowing so smoothly. It was beautiful. Whatever was going on, I imagine the guest, or I imagine the host played a big role into it, but it was just, it felt like it was like vibing too, so
it was great. And they put so much work into the studio, and they have a great vibe, and they're great people, and they have an amazing editor. I mean, that's the best edited podcast I've ever seen in my life. That's incredible. Yeah. And he was just in town, and he was there in the studio, so he kind of absorbed the vibe of the whole conversation. That made me very, very happy. Yeah, man. No, I always love the questions you bring to the table, man. It makes me go. It makes me really excited about interacting with them. When you because your job requires pretty technical thought process, but also you're a pretty deep thinker. How often do you feel, if you have to, and really think about that for a second, how often do you feel that the deeper philosophical exploration informs your hardcore decisions in a business, let's say?
This is new to me. I was very much so a student of the shut up and calculate era. That's how I was trained. And so that is where I go. Like I can shut my mind off and just crunch, right?
Mm-hmm.
And to some extent you have to be able to do that, because, going from 0 to 1, getting something done requires that,
Yeah.
But at the same time, once you start learning how to really think and ask these questions, it really changes the entire, your entire perspective on that type of work. But one thing that I've been thinking about, especially with AI, philosophically, is from kind of this, like, I hear a lot of evolutionary, or anthropologists talk about, this hunter-gatherer society, right? Where we got into groups, and we collectively hunted and gathered, and we leveraged our resources, and we just had this very kind of we combined resources, and we were these like little tiny entities of groups, right? And we made it through evolution through leveraging resources this way. And what I was thinking about recently is, with evolution and with all this technology, we've become very individualized, right? We have communities, but really we're still, we kind of have this nuclear family concept, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's worked because all of us can do certain jobs that bring money, and we can, buy food and satisfy Maslow's hierarchy of requirements: food, shelter, everything, right? But then now that AI is, I saw this paper by Google's DeepMind, which essentially showed that algorithms can now learn how to learn better, right? Which is a really scary thing, because it's kind of the signal for an inflection point where it's like oh, they can actually teach themselves now. Like we don't have to teach them to learn. They can figure things out and optimize things. And it's the beginning of that, and it's kind of scary, but I now got to a point where I kind of maybe naively felt like, oh, well, my job is secure because I'm the guy pushing the buttons. And now I'm like, oh, this is going to come after. I'm not safe from this beast. But now I've gotten to a point where, now that AI is going to really start taking over a lot of jobs, are we going to go back to the hunter gatherer days where we are able to stare at a sunset and chew on a piece of meat, shirtless, or like, which feels very awesome? Or is it that we because it's not sustainable to have capitalism with robots and AI growing at the rate that they're growing. So there's going to be some, and I imagine billionaires like Elon should know that, okay, society will not be stable if we just have a few people winning and everyone else is just out of a job, right? That would be a very unstable society. So there kind of naturally feels like there's this communistic or socialistic plateau to capitalism. And I kind of wonder if that unlocks this ability for us to return back to this era where maybe we're not, looking at Microsoft Excel all day. Maybe we're actually talking like this, or thinking about bigger questions, or just enjoying food or playing music, or like what is that, right? So
by the way, Val just said, screw society. I'm chewing on a piece of meat shirtless right now. Which, Val, can be interpreted in many different ways. In the dark with a knife. Okay, that narrows it down. Also, I'm very curious. The first thing to say is that obviously there's no guarantees, right? And I think everybody understands that. But I also think that we are the sensors. We are the biosensors of information. In this universe, in the physical universe, we have bodies that integrate both the feeling and the experience of the 3D and the ability to interact with some portion of that higher emergent abstraction space. So I think what AIs are, they're extensions of us in deeper into the abstraction space. But that abstraction space can learn all the abstraction in the world, but it will never be as effective without a sensor that senses the physical world. And that's what intuition is. So if the more we drop into intuition and flow, that abstraction space will be riding behind a sensor that is telling it in real time, consolidates information faster than the longest calculation in the universe that they can make. Currently it's not that clear because it seems like they would do everything a billion times better and they can just create the sensors. Well, my intuition tells me that there's something about the consolidation of moments of experience in a human that is that universal sensor that can basically then consolidate information in real time in a way that no amount of computation will ever give you in real time. It will always have a buffering speed no matter how fast, which will always be the impediment of it. So in other words, if you think of the inner workings of the ultimate mind as being all the AIs combined, coupled with some quantum computers and some other magic we're going to invent, you still have this, you need the skin, which is humans, and the biological tapestry that supports humans. So you still need the sensors kind of testing the environment all the time, experiencing it for what it is, and then reporting. By experiencing it, it's reporting back to the system saying, it's this, it's that. There's a meaning here that I'm interacting with that the machine cannot interact with. It can calculate it, but it cannot interact with meaning directly. That's my intuition. And that's the if you can create an economy around that, because that's the value we bring. Economy should be around value, right? Money is just one way of measuring value. Yeah. So I think that's where the economy needs to go. It needs to measure the ability of a person to interact with meaning in a way that is effective, creative, and something that can be translated to viable path forward, a product, something that can be translated into things that then can help humanity propel the biological organism, not just the human organism, biological organism as a whole, and help it expand throughout space, which I think is what I guess if you want to call it the destiny of life in the universe. Does that make sense, or is that too obscure?
No, that does make sense, and it kind of even got me thinking a little bit about integration of like cyborgs, essentially. And if like
Sign me up,
if
baby.
companies will even get to a point where they say, "Hey, rent us your meat suit with all these awesome sensors for a couple hours a day. You'll do this task at superhuman speed, and then live on your own." Right? Kind of like I imagine a world like iRobot. I don't know if you saw that movie. But
Yeah,
that
yeah, I
movie's
did.
so good.
Hollywood has to sell it, baby. So it has to be conflict. But I'm pretty sure there's a way to do this without the conflict. Unless we just, if this is something we're addicted to, that's a different story. But if we stop valuing it, this is like I'm already. The reason I know it's possible is because I already see it in myself. So if one person that is very average can experience this, I know that future humans that are going to be way more advanced than us will absolutely be able to do it with great ease. And what I mean specifically is that I have very little need for drama now. So I get like people still go into this like, oh come on, it's juicy, you know? Like, did you hear the second I had? Did you hear that? I'm like, no, I don't care. Just don't care. Like it doesn't matter. Like, yo, but how? Like, wow, how can you? How do you like? I don't care. It doesn't matter. It doesn't bring me any meaning. It doesn't bring me fulfillment. It does not make me feel good in my body. I don't care. And if I can experience this now, and I'm probably the opposite of what should be in the dictionary of like a well balanced human. Like I'm doing my best, but I'm definitely not that. So imagine what the children of the future would be able to achieve with the right kind of education, with the right kind of parents that understand what's best, and with the systems that can help, that social media that helps facilitate this versus the opposite. Like imagine how many things we can, we can actually create. So I can totally see a future with zero drama and filled with meaning, just by the way that we create and interact and connect and all of that stuff.
Yeah, and you brought up a good question in the podcast where you said, the Buddha lived 2,000 years ago, and you were kind of looking at your life from the perspective of the Buddhist principles, right? And you were kind of even suggesting maybe I am actually like, maybe I am living a life of very few attachments, right? Or like the bare minimum attachments that is healthy. And it got me thinking about, yeah, that is he did live during, a different time. And although I'm sure, going into a cave, would work for us. Maybe that's what we need to do actually. But what is our version of that cave, right? Is it not being on social media as much? Is it yeah, I don't know. I was kind of wondering what that is.
There's a signature to it. You're right that it's very difficult to explain with words or discern even in real time, but there's definitely a difference. It feels one way to want something, and it feels another way to enjoy something. They're very different emotions. They're very different interactions with the world. When you truly just enjoy something, you truly receive it for what it is, and there's a flow, there's a free flow of energy in the body. It feel like if you practice enough of Vipassana or any other form of specifically mindfulness, which is just paying attention to whatever arises, you start noticing that actually feels very different to have that. It's kind of like, this is really nice. The second you have this tug of like, oh, I want more of that, that's attachment. That's a want, and it feels different. It starts going in the direction of that little troll under the bridge. It was like, I want more, and then that feels different. It has like a constricting energy. It's like, I want to grab, right? And notice like that's the extreme version of that is basically, all the uppers basically. Like they have this kind of like very clicky, very fast, very penetrating energy. And it basically is kind of like the grab, want. It's closing constantly. It's like clawing, right? It doesn't. It's unsustainable. Eventually, it claws in. It goes into like this, right? Versus free flow energy. It's beautiful. It's coming and it's going and it's okay. Just let it flow through you, like non-attachment. Now, obviously, we're still like in a world with values the clawing to a large degree, but if you can get more and more and more into the flow, but still create structures as you go, that is the optimal state. And I think eventually we will crack that. Or I think that's the only way we will survive for millions and billions of years versus kind of being extinct within the next 100 years. I think that's the main difference. It's just how it feels in the body. It's almost like there's a correct way for the energy to flow, an optimal one, let's say, not correct, optimal one, and you can define it in relationship to what the system is. So if you really want to get nitpicky, you can say the human body is arranged in such a way that when energy flows through it in a particular way, it's the optimal way of actuating function and sustaining over time versus the non-optimal way that either builds up in the system too much and creates over like it burns you, overpowers you. Like in a factory when you see these like gauges climbing up, it goes to red, right? That's not optimal. It's not sustainable, which is what humanity was kind of doing, which is just pedal to the metal till you run out of road, which is not sustainable. But if you can say, okay, hey, like if you can say personally, and then slowly it will translate to collectively because you're going to be educating more people to do that, which is you saying, okay, we have all the resources, we love building, we want to innovate, we want to do all of these things, but we don't need right now this other mall. I'm coming, baby. We don't need that other mall because currently there's plenty of those. And just because somebody wanted a little bit more money over here, they would have enough of a spiritual wherewithal to understand, okay, you know what? I'm going to allocate my attention towards a plan that will happen in 1,000 years from now. And I'm okay with that. I don't need that. I have everything I need. I don't want. I don't need that right now. I let it flow through me. Whatever I need will come. And the second you start making that as a functional philosophy versus a kind of like out there idea philosophy, that's when you start making changes. And I do believe that we're already experiencing this. There was some study, I should look into this. For all intents and purposes, I'm making this up. I'm not. I did hear this like some kind of a study, but I don't know enough about the data. So let's say just my intuition, even though I do know that there was some study that was done on this. But like kids now, they value material things a lot less. And I should probably look into the study. It would be interesting to find out. Because if it is true, it's very encouraging, right? And now it might be because of some other toxic reason. I don't know, because the world is complex. Maybe it's because they're actually just fully online all the time. So all they care about is the interactions, which is not necessarily that healthy. So they don't care about buying things. Maybe that's why. I don't know. But I do believe that it's possible to produce a human. It cares a lot less about the grabby and cares much more about the fulfillment over time and also about that flowy feeling in the body. If we can get that to be the most valued experience in human in the human saga, that's how you get a human that will populate the universe with something beautiful.
Nice. I know you have to go right now, but I wanted to ask you one last thing.
Sure.
So I have been dealing with OCD. I think you mentioned that you have OCD.
Oh, yeah.
And it's this very crack demon
like
energy.
Right? Yep.
Yeah. And has meditation, have you kind of conquered that?
Mushrooms helped me more than anything else. I used to have crazy OCD when I was a kid. Crazy. Now it only enters into some thought patterns, sometimes obsessive thought patterns that I still know how to allow to unfold. So meditation definitely helps with that. So like when it happens and it's overpowers me, I just allow it. I just allow it to do it. I don't judge it. And then it might go on for like 10, 15 minutes and will go away. But it's much easier than, let's say, needing to open the door 100 times before you exit the house. That was debilitating. But that, I'm pretty sure that what was functionally healing there, like I don't even have an inkling of that anymore. And I attribute this to mushrooms. I think mushrooms are the best at that because what they do is they basically relax the machinery. What that is a stuck process that tells you that if you don't complete it, everything is wrong. Like nothing. It's almost like, when sometimes people with not necessarily that high levels of disgust in the body, disgust is an actual like emotion. But sometimes you have like an attack, like pregnant women have it sometimes. It's just people. Sometimes you wake up and you feel off and you have high levels of disgust. Like everything feels icky. Like you can't even touch the dishes, like it's that feeling. So it's a very similar wrongness, like icky. If you don't do that one thing, you have to do it or everything's going to be icky. So that is a disorder, obviously. I don't know exactly what the mechanisms in the brain are, but that's essentially what's happening. And what you learn what mushrooms are really good at is relaxing that machinery. It's like I always think of it like, and I actually saw it on Mushroom once. It's like this super tangled necklace, like a fine necklace that women wear, like a fine, the actual chain of the necklace. It's very fine. So when it gets tangled, when it gets all knotted, it's almost impossible to break apart because every time we try, it pulls from another direction and it ties it even more, right? That's what, if I would have to imagine OCD, that's what it's like. So what I saw, it was this like beautiful purple liquid that you drop the necklace into, and it literally just by the sheer floating element of it, it slowly just unties itself. It just like opens up, and then you can just gently pull it off, and that's it. There's no more knots. So heavy doses of mushrooms can definitely achieve this, but it has to be done in a constructive way. Like I would recommend to do it with a therapist who works with psilocybin, and just do the session and then work on that specifically. I think it will be, I don't know if there was ever research done on this, but I'm willing to bet money that it will be one of the most effective ways to eliminate that for good. Like just make it go away.
There's a lot of research on that actually. That's kind of how I got into the space, is I was trying to undo it, but I think you're right. I think the constructive part is the part that I was missing. I just did it on my own, right? And I don't think I did the exposures that I needed to.
Well, you can still do it. I'm sorry I'm cutting you, but you can still do it alone. It's just that you have to aim in the week after. It's like a glass blower. Like you heat up the glass, so now it's much more malleable. It's malleable for about a week, like really malleable. Your psychology, that is. So you can actually like encounter these situations and notice them, and then watch them in a way that is smoothing. That's the best way I can describe it. Like you would still see the pattern, but you see it and then you don't engage with it and you let it run. And that is the equivalent of untying these knots. You can do this, but you have to put very close attention to your psychology in the week after a heavy dose. You need to do like 5-6 grams. No, none of that 1-2 grams, like 5-6. Go full in. And then you have to allocate a week in which you don't have that much work. You can't have more of the stuff that is overbearing over you of a must. You can't have a must for about a week. You can have, I can do it if I want to, can't have a must. So if you can allocate a week to it, what you do is a heavy dose. You submerge your brain in this. It creates a lot more neuroplasticity. And then you allow yourself to glide through that week. And every time you see that arising, you fold it into this new frame. It's the new shape you're giving your psychology. Like a wave washing over a rock. Like it removes the edges. You allow it to wash over it. You allow yourself to just be in that and like, okay. And because it doesn't engage you at the same way when that happens. You can see the pattern sometimes, but you're like, oh, I don't have to do it. Okay. And I'm just going to sit here. And even if it catches you, it's much easier to just forgive yourself. If you can give yourself that 1 week, with full attention on what you can do in terms of the fluidity of it, even without any therapy, I bet you that within 2 or 3 sessions like that, which obviously because you're a busy person, it's going to probably take you a year because you can't, like, you have to time it. You have to do, let's say, 3-4 days here, 3-4 days there, take a vacation, go somewhere, preferably in a really nice place. That I think would make a difference for most people.
Yeah, thank you so much, man. That's awesome. Yeah, I'll give it another shot again, and keep trying it. But
call us while you're on it. Call us while you're on it.
Yeah, I will. I'll even just turn on the lasers while I'm around.
There you go.
Yeah, but I think you're right. I think the stress, because stress makes it worse, right? I don't know if you've noticed, like,
yeah.
And so if you're constantly stressed, like I feel like I get in these modes sometimes where I'm like, this is embarrassingly bad, and I need to do something about this. It's just, but
I have a lot of sympathy for this, man. I know what it feels like. It's terrible, and I can't even imagine people that in adult life they still have these like debilitating, check the stove, check the door, check the stove. People live like this their whole lives. It's crazy.
You know what? And it's crazy. Yeah. So there's like the debilitating rituals that you do, but then you even mentioned this like micro OCD, which is just like thoughts that are recurring, which no one can kind of like, maybe you're not debilitated by it, but it kind of is occupying a lot of brain power, right? It's kind of doing damage in some ways. And so that is something that I've always lived with and never knew that was a problem. And so, yeah. But
yeah.
Anyways, Danny, I'll let you get back to it. I'm gonna start cleaning and stuff, but
I hope not because of your OCD.
Yeah, no, exactly, dude. That's exactly what it is. It's the OCD cleaning, and everything has to be clean. And but you're right. It's this ickiness to it. And Jordan Peterson actually did a lecture, a Harvard lecture, where
Throw
he
it
even
out.
said
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
I know I can't say his name, but the H man likely had
Oh,
that
yeah.
as well.
And it was exacerbated tremendously by the amphetamines.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
It's
That
funny.
was,
Some people on Reddit were saying that ADHD treatments can help with OCD, and I was like, I don't know if I believe that. I think that's what the H man got stuck in. But yeah, I've been very very careful with that.
very, very careful, especially if you get the inkling to clean the country. That's where you have to draw the line. All right, guys. Brother, I love you so much. Thank you so much for always coming and adding so much color to the lives. NIKOMACKAY. Follow Nico on TikTok. Again, NIKOMACKAY. Please follow Nico. He's an incredible human, tremendous friend, and always adding a lot of wonderful flavor to the chat. Thank you, brother. All right, guys, I'm gonna call the night. Yes, Ebony, to your question, if you guys want to get some of the merch, that is going to be a limited edition merch because it's not going to exist ever again. I feel like Supreme right now. We're never going to have this again. It's the old logo. We have a new logo. So the old logo, if you go to codeofreality.com, any shirt and mug you're going to get is the old logo that will never exist again. It's going to be a collector's item. And if you get it in the next 5 minutes, you also get a set of knives that can cut through shoes. And basically through anything you want. No, it doesn't come with knives because I don't know how binding this thing as a contract is. But you definitely get a wonderful collector's item shirt and or mug. So go check it out on codeofreality.com. If you want, ooh, this is so cool. What is that? Thank you, Lycon. A pot of gold with Despicable Me. All right. If you want to follow me across platforms, it will be Danny Goller on TikTok and Instagram. It will be Goller Danny on X, LaserX83 on Twitch. Please go give us a follow, and hopefully some people were following on Twitch. And Dango Thoughts on YouTube. DANGO Thoughts. Also, you should follow our Discord. Come join our Discord. Great community. On TikTok, it's in the link tree right up there. On YouTube, on Dango Thoughts, DANGO Thoughts. It is on the main page, the third link of the social media. That's our Discord channel. And you can also see our mods. Just put it there, Ebony. Thank you so much. Come join the members program on YouTube on Dango Thoughts. It gives you access to weekly lives aside from the daily lives. The next one is happening on Sunday, in which we dive much deeper into subjects. There's no commercials, there's no nothing. It's just me and you guys, and we're diving deeper into certain subjects. We watch videos, we break them down, we make crank jokes, talk about aliens, all kinds of good stuff. It includes early access to all my content, private stuff in my life that exists nowhere else but on YouTube members. And from the second tier and up, it includes Zoom calls with me, which one is also coming up. I believe it's going to be on Monday. We moved it because so Ebony and Chris can show up. Thank you so much for all incredible moderators, Ebony and Guru and Chris. Love you guys. And all the amazing and hilarious members of our community. Val, valuing you tremendously. Thank you so much for letting us know about knives and meat and darkness. I don't know what your life is, but I'm always fascinated by it. It's amazing. Nico, love you, brother. Evil Icon, thank you so much for all the community members and everybody. Even that, if I didn't mention you, I do see you. People that show up on a daily basis, semi-daily basis, making this community the incredible thing that it is. Thank you so much. Have a good night. See you tomorrow. Peace and love. Ciao. Have a good night, guys.